Hi, my name is Marie Chang, and if you're watching this video, you've probably seen some of the other videos I've done where I draw myself into different shows. But today I wanted to do a different kind of video because I wanted to talk about art burnout. Pretty much every artist has felt this way. You go from being able to make art all the time to suddenly not being able to do anything at all and just really hating art. I thought it would be fitting to pair this talk with a time lapse of one of the first digital drawings that I did after not really drawing for like over a year. So this was a self-portrait I did. That was my version of a self-portrait, at least. And it was something that was fun and kind of helped me get out of my art burnout rut. I think for me, the burnout really started a couple years after I graduated from college. So I went to college for animation thinking that I would be a board artist, and I loved drawing and was like, this is the thing I want to do for the rest of my life. But I didn't have any understanding of what being an artist actually meant in the context of a production. And the more that I tried to actually take the tests and kind of put myself in the shoes of an artist who actually had that job, the more I realized that I just wasn't the right fit for what those parameters were. I felt so lonely at the idea of having to be by myself for 40 hours a week drawing, and my friends who were incredible artists and very well equipped for that lifestyle excelled at it and thrived, and I just felt like, I have to make the tough choice of acknowledging that there was a huge difference between what I thought this job was and how I thought I would feel versus what was actually the best choice for me. And I remember at a certain point deciding that pursuing a career as an artist was no longer what I wanted to do, and instead I wanted to be a writer. And when I decided that, I suddenly felt like almost embarrassed that I had even tried to do art, because it's like everyone around me knew that's what I wanted, and I felt really bad that I had wasted the time of these incredible artists around me. And I think because of that feeling of like guilt and shame, I just stopped drawing for like at least a year or two. So during the time that I was trying to get my writing career together, I was like, I have to focus on writing. I can't waste time drawing. Like, I've spent so much of my life trying to do this thing, and clearly it didn't work out. So there's no point in me even trying to hone this craft, right? Like, why waste my time? It's done. So for a long time, that was my attitude, and I didn't even pick up a pencil to sketch. It was just something that I thought of as a part of my past. And I think if we were to boil down art burnout just as a concept for people, a lot of times it's just the gap between the expectation you have of yourself as an artist and the realistic human emotional bandwidth you have left to achieve that goal. And I think when you feel like you're constantly not hitting that expectation, it becomes really discouraging to try at all, because then it's like, well, why bother? I'm just gonna fail. And I think that's how I felt about drawing for a really long time, but that's not true, and it's also unrealistic to think of any person as, like a perfect artist machine that just produces amazing work on an hourly basis without a need for breaks. But I didn't really realize that my mindset was wrong until I had the time to step away from it. So I've told you the whole story about, how my art burnout kind of started and happened and how it kind of affected me. And in terms of getting out of that art burnout, I would say things started to turn around once I started drawing again for fun. And for fun, I mean like just drawing stuff that made me laugh and things that made me happy, regardless of the pragmatic outcome. I think I, as a person, get really caught up in wanting things to like have a purpose, you know? Like if I'm gonna work on something, it needs to be monetizable, or I need to be able to feed myself off of it, which I guess is the same thing. But I think there's just this survivalist instinct of like, why invest in something that I won't be able to show for? But sometimes I really underestimate the value of joy and the value of doing something because it makes you happy in that moment. And the fact that that should matter a lot more than people place value on often. So this drawing right here that I'm doing, I should probably explain it because it's super bizarre. But this was one of the first like fun drawings that I did after a very long time. And it's a series of black and white sketches that tells the story of a herd of Maries. I like to think of it as my personal origin story. But as you can tell, I'm sure from this drawing alone, there's absolutely no industry value in this drawing. I don't know a single studio that would be like, oh yes, we want more of this. Please draw yourself like a wild animal. But I really like this type of drawing. I love drawing in this style. I like coming up with really weird, quirky poems and things that allow me to explore an alternative world where I am just this rabid cave woman who, you know, gets to run around on a hairball. Like, why not? So I think being able to find fun things for me to draw again really helped me realize, like, oh, it doesn't matter that I decided to not pursue art as my full-time career. I can still enjoy the act of drawing. Like, I don't have to walk away from it with my tail between my legs and just be sad that I wanted this thing and it didn't happen in the way that I expected. So I think that was like the biggest thing. Another thing that really helped me, and I know like literally every person says this, but that time that I took away that was a break kind of helped me learn to miss drawing. You know, it was something that I had done almost my whole life without a lot of breaks in between, except for certain years in high school. But in my adult life, I had always drawn almost every day. And so not having that made me be like, oh, maybe there is some kind of personal value in this for myself, and I can just return to it as a fun pastime instead of putting all this pressure on something that really never asked to be given that amount of pressure in the first place. Resetting my expectations and alleviating that pressure made it so I could, you know, enjoy myself and be happy drawing, you know, versions of me burrowed in the ground and apparently, you know, mummified in this sleeping bag. It looks like that's what I'm up to. Oh, and I'm bursting through a wagon on the prairie, so that's fun. But, you know, this is the kind of stuff that I really love doing, and I think that for me, that was the biggest thing. I also think that just making sure I wasn't thinking of myself as like a product. I think people nowadays especially, it's like, what's your brand? Like, what's your presence? Do you, like, how are you gonna stand out? And whenever I would focus on that, it made it really hard to do that actual thing. But when I just stepped away from it and was like, okay, I'm not gonna worry about like what my brand is. I don't even know what that means. I'm just gonna draw the stuff that I think is funny and stuff that I like. And it turns out my brand is like creepy, cute, I don't know, cave lady stuff, because that's what I'm going for here. And that helped me just feel a lot more relief and a lot more secure in what my identity was as an artist as well. And that also made it a lot easier for me to not constantly compare myself to other artists, which again is something that I think everyone talks about and brings up as like a don't do this, but it's so much harder to actually practice than to tell someone, oh, like, don't compare yourself to other artists. Everyone's like on their own path. But I remember being like, how come I can't draw beautiful like paintings or, you know, like photorealistic recreations of the original form? Everything I draw comes out super cartoony and super weird and like real funky for the most part. And I think I've learned to really love that side of things, but there would be moments where I was like, well, it's not what anyone wants, so how come I can't be what other people want? And in an industry where you are rewarded financially for being able to match your creative pursuits to other people's expectations and needs, I think that it's always a challenge to separate the part, for me at least, the part of me that loves drawing for myself versus the part of me that wanted to turn it into a career. And even though it sounds really weird to say, I'm glad that I had to have that experience and that I realized I would be a better fit for something else, because now I'm super lucky to have a career that does fit my abilities and still allows me to be creative, but art can be something for myself now, you know? Like, I can draw myself as a weirdo holding boba and an EpiPen, and that's something that's very, very me, but absolutely useless in a professional animation production setting. And I don't get to change what the industry is like, but I can change how I react to it. I can change kind of, you know, my lifestyle choices and my goals to make sure that I'm always addressing my mental and emotional health first. And that's not to say that in the future I wouldn't be open to drawing on a more professional level, but I've, you know, as a result of this experience, discovered a love and a passion for an adjacent craft, and I feel lucky to be able to be a writer that can also draw, you know, weird little comics like this in my free time. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling down about where you are as an artist or any kind of discipline, especially creative, I just encourage you to give yourself a break. I know everyone says that, but you know, take some time away, don't compare yourself to others, and if you can find the source of what made you happy doing that craft to begin with, it might be the right step towards feeling like you are actually excited about, you know, drawing again or creating art again. I know it's going to be different for everyone, but that was kind of my path, and I hope sharing this story has been helpful for someone out there. So now I actually want to show you all the final product of my very first comic that I did after kind of the whole art burnout thing, and I'll do a little reading of my project. A herd of wild Maries once roamed the Great Plains. They had a lot of asthma and kinda looked the same. Some shed sentient hairballs, others brushed their manes. They burrowed everywhere, impossible to tame. Then one day the Maries all croaked, the nuts were to blame. But rumor has it, one still remains. Well, that pretty much sums up the point of this video. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next time.